Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at another interview coming out of the Korean Fan Festival for Final Fantasy XIV. This one coming from the website Game Insight. Somebody in my Discord linked this to me earlier today, and I'll add a link to this in the description below. Now, the website's entirely in Korean. I right-click translate to English. You can see the top 20 years of Papon 14. Yeah, that's a translate to English right-click kind of thing. So if you do read Korean, and you hear something that's just kind of off, feel free to comment below, because obviously I have no other way of checking it because I don't read the language. I can't translate it. So anyway, let's get right into it. This just starts with a quick introduction, how they haven't done a Korean fan festival in quite some time. And now they're doing one ahead of the December release for Dawntrail in Korea. Reminder that Korea is not yet on parity with global. They are aiming for parity soon, meaning that the global schedule will be the same across all regions, but I don't think we have an exact time of when they are going to be doing that. So let's get into the actual interview. It's been 5 years since you held a fan festival in Korea. How do you feel? He's just glad to be doing it again. He's like, feels like I'm enjoying the game, and all the staff are very grateful for that. So basically a positive reception. Orchestra progressed. Some users were moved to tears at the scene, but did the producer Naoki Yoshida have any poignant parts? Just talking about how he feels about different songs with the orchestra concert, Your Answer, Close in the Distance, Flow, just naming a few of the major tracks that are more emotional. At FanFest, he made the surprise announcement that the update cycle for the Korean server will be aligned with global. Any special reason for this? Obviously, when they announced it in China, they received a lot of support from Korea to do the same thing. And so they think of it as a target for the next patch. So I guess that means by 7.1 or by 7.2, because we're about to be on 7.1, so obviously it couldn't be. I guess by 7.2 we can expect that maybe China and Korea will be on parity. They're just working on all the things that actually have to happen within China and Korea to actually make that happen. On top of that, they want to be able to expand the story of the new Eorzea, which is the foundation work for further challenge, expansion, and advancement. It's kind of expression of will to continue 14 for more than 10 years. The language and correspondence will be further expanded in the future, so please stay tuned. There's been some issues with the patch versions, with the fan festivals. Yeah, so this is a big thing. We get Dawntrail fan festivals in China and Korea after Dawntrail is already out globally, so they can't really share anything new, but they also know China and Korea probably already knows a lot about the stuff they're going to be seeing there. News is able to, travel. There are people in China and Korea that even VPN into the global versions. They're not supposed to, shush. But we know that they do it for a fact. So being able to hold all the fan festivals before Dawntrail releases does make this news for global as well. That means that, well, although, oh, wait, no, hold on. Now that I think about it, it is news for global, but now that I think about it, I'm like, uh-oh, does that mean that each of the fan fests is going to have even less information individually? Maybe that won't happen. Remains to be seen. But the idea is that they can do all of them before an expansion releases instead of worrying about, doing them after the fact, and it just ends up being kind of weird since there's already some idea for them of what to expect because they've obviously been keeping up with the global's news. You said you'll continue to be a game service for the rest of your life, meaning Yoshi P will be in, probably doing Final Fantasy XIV for the rest of his life. He said that in other interviews. What is the source of your confidence? I didn't say anything if I was going to shake over time. I know from life experience, if you get swept up in the atmosphere, you'll get in trouble. So I try to tell only certain stories. I've experienced a lot of MMOs and seen them shut down. But on the contrary, there are many games that continue to be serviced, but are not up to par with the past due to lack of enthusiasm in the community. It's probably Final Fantasy XI. Final Fantasy XI, still around, still gets small updates, even got expansion stories as late as, I think, last October was when they ended it. Maybe last October is just when I did it. It was probably done earlier than that. I mean, a year ago today. But yeah, no, I know what he means. Anyway, MMORPGs are like villages, worlds, and countries, and there are many people and many users who enjoy them. They will not disappear. We need to think about how users can live and enjoy the world. The goal of 14 is to constantly create a reason for users to live, to play the game. I'm sometimes asked, and I don't have a producer, director in charge of one game for so long. So I'm like, don't you want to be in charge of another game? Or aren't you tired of it? Basically, people asking, don't you want to stop working on 14 and do something else? There's just so many things I want to do and achieve with 14. I'm so excited as we prepare for the next expansion, so he'll continue into the future. Maintain such heat that is faster to die than lose interest. As long as Yoshida doesn't die suddenly, he's likely to continue working. I don't like the ominous nature of that. And she's like, as long as I don't die all of a sudden out of nowhere, then, I'll just keep going. little morbid, but, you know, I get what he's saying. Mention you're working on an expansion, obviously. How many years can you continue with the general idea of the story? So this is going to be an insight into how long our story, our new, I guess, storyline is. I've been doing this since I made Ishgard of the Heavens and Liberate of Crimson. That's Heavensward and Stormblood. And I'm thinking about 3 different storylines in the future. We've already planned a big expansion to version 10.0 and talked to the team in advance. So we need to figure out what users want and how to connect them. The update after Legacy of Gold, Dawntrail, will show the flow of the story in the future. At the moment, we have 3 expansions ready, and we're thinking about up to 4, including stories. It can be said that it will be ready for the next 20 years. So next 20 years or so is a bit much. I think what that actually is saying that for the 20-year mark of the game, because he says by then he'll be over 60. Yoshida's currently 51, I believe he just turned. And so, yeah, I think they're just saying, you know, it'll be getting us to the 20-year mark of Final Fantasy XIV. He'll be working hard unless the company says that he shouldn't. I hope users will not worry too much about what will happen in the future and look forward. So they've basically already decided where things are going for the next several expansions, all the way up to 10.0. They've decided. So 8, 9, and 10, with a potential 11.0 like in the works. We're thinking about including up to 4. So this doesn't directly answer if those are all tied together, but he does say that he wants to see the reception to each of them and then figure out how to connect them. So this is a little different than the approach they took for Endwalker, where it wasn't really until after Stormblood where they absolutely understood what they were going to be doing as they were going to be working towards more of a conclusion to Hydaelyn and Zodiark. They actually originally were going to do Shadowbringers as an expansion in 4.0. And then did Stormblood instead to set up for Shadowbringers later. So it's interesting to see because what they've already decided may not even happen in the order. They may decide that they need to introduce the elements differently or change the way things. It's really interesting to hear about that. And it's one of those things I want to hear more about as we actually get the expansions releasing. But basically, yeah, they're making sure they've got plans for the future. Not that big of a surprise, but always nice to kind of hear. Class balance, we talked about this in the other one. Will the Korean expansion be implemented in version 7.15? Now, this is one where I think the translations are probably going to be lost a little bit. Because will the Korean expansion be implemented in version 7.15? So I guess they're saying that, is that the timing wise, like globally is 7.15 and then Korea's Dawntrail will release? Bounce a new expansion pack for the Korean server will be applied to the version that has already been adjusted. Oh, so they're saying that on 7.0's release in Korea, they will have the post 7.0 adjustments made to the jobs. Yeah, we won't see a situation where Pictomancer is too strong like the early days of Global. Not only class bounce, but also minor bugs will be hotfixed. Yeah, I mean, we know what bugs those were. Advantage to the delay of the application of the expansion, but if it is applied at the same time as Global in the future, the initial confusion may continue. I'll try my best. So yeah, that's probably one of the last times that'll happen for the Korean version because they're going to be on parity with Global soon, but they're basically getting job balances earlier because they're already made on Global, so they can just incorporate them into 7.0 there. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Picto's still strong. It's too strong, I think I would almost still describe Picto as. So, not entirely accurate, but again, it's the auto-translate, so who knows. New class Pictomancer feels like a top class for the Black Mage due to the overbalance. What will the balance look like in the future? The Pictomancer had more firepower than we expected, but the Black Mage dealing ability was supposed to be stronger. So Black Mage was supposed to be stronger than Picto, which means even post-buff, I mean, still kind of a problem. But that's very interesting because they even says here, we're going to balance in the direction of elevating other classes. The Black Mage will go stronger, and not just because it's producer-director Yoshida's job. That's what everyone always says. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the other one that just technically, as long as the job's all relative to each other in the same spot, the balance doesn't matter as long as the content is still the same level of challenging buff. It depreciates old content, but that's going to happen anyway, which does suck, especially because there's been a big renewed interest in low item level or mid item level no echo. Like that kind of stuff has definitely gotten more popular during Endwalker's time when there wasn't enough like long form content being released. And that's continued now. And whenever they do this, it does affect that kind of stuff. So, it's interesting to hear that Black Mage was supposed to be stronger, which, to be fair, we all expected, but that it may be stronger than Pictomancer in Pictomancer's current state later. Although I've spoken to enough Black Mages at this point, and I don't think Black Mages even care that much about the idea of Black Mage being stronger than I don't even think that's what Black Mages are concerned about anymore, given what they've told me. They just fundamentally want gameplay changes because they don't like what's happened to it in Dawntrail itself. It's not even just the loss of non-standard, it's how the current kit interacts with what is now standard. You know, like not being able to hold your what is the ability called? God, I've barely been playing. I've been playing Metaphor so much. It's literally the same as the Flare Star. That's what it is. I had to think of the Bozia name for it. Yeah, your Flare Star doesn't carry over, the way that Thunder actually interacts with the kit. There's been a whole bunch of things, and even after some of the changes they made, I think Black Mages are more focused on that. So hopefully that while they are trying to make Black Mage stronger, hopefully that's part of it, because I think people do consider that to be a more debilitating aspect of Black Mage, is its actual play pattern right now. That's what they tell me, at least. Obviously, I haven't played it much other than leveling it this expansion. Since you plan to increase the update cycle to the Korean server and keep the global server update, to what extent do you plan to adjust the speed? They're just doing testing, so they don't really have an answer at this point, and they'll have more information in the future. Said that MMOs are a genre where those who don't give up win. So how do you feel about the 10th anniversary of service in Korea? Oh, wait, 10th anniversary of service. When did it open in Korea? I don't remember. I mean, that's got to be... Well, he says that he did an interview with G-Star in 2015, which I guess is where you said MMORPGs are a genre where people who don't give up win. I'm assuming that's where the question... I don't remember when the Korean version opened. I feel like it was sometime way after the fact, though, but it's been so long. Won't be able to keep up with 10 years of other games that have been in service so far. Looking forward to the future. Rather than giving up, continue moving forward and broaden your base is the key to distancing yourself from the latecomers. Reason I can say it's going to be more successful is because it won't be able to keep up with 10 years that other games have been in service so far. Interesting. Charge of 14 before he knew it. He was 14. Oh, okay. It's already been 14 years. Yeah, this is just some of the auto-translate stuff getting kind of mished and mashed and jumbled, because this doesn't really seem like a full answer. It's just like, yeah, I hope it continues to be more successful and we'll keep working towards it. That's kind of what the answer kind of boils down to in a sense. In 2018, you said you would look for ways to expand 14's presence in Korea. Did you feel anything about this visit? Hard to answer. He was in Australia just before this. Yes, he was. At Australian Melbourne Game Festival. Haneda and Korea to perform at Fan Festival just one day. Since the event started with enthusiastic welcome from users, we intuitively noticed the scale has increased a lot. Probably the first person to feel the Korean heat, but the only time I personally toured Korea after Fan Festival was when I went out to eat samgyetang for lunch. In fact, I feel the level of interest is growing as the question I get in interviews change every year. There was a C-19 pandemic around the world and was disconnect between countries, which is hard to predict. In 10 years, if the update cycle of the global server and Korean server will be the same, community will expand further. I mean, ultimately, he's just saying he doesn't really know. He hasn't been there in a while. He feels it, but like he hasn't actually like been around to see if 14 has more presence in Korea versus the FanFest being just bigger and him interacting with people there. But he thinks that when the entire world is on parity, it will probably, by definition, expand the presence of Final Fantasy XIV. And I think that's accurate. I think that's a fair assessment to make. Planning to add new classes as well as make changes to existing ones. Now, adding new classes, they mean jobs. You know, classes, some people use it as shorthand for jobs. You know, they just say whatever, you know. As community expands, it becomes difficult to judge. During the time of Ishgard, there was talk of mitigating the jobs because it was too difficult. And then Stormblood, oh, okay. So I think this is supposed to be a balance question. Like, how are you balancing the jobs? Like, how are you maintaining or managing job balance at the time? So it's not too dissimilar from the question in the other one. So Heavensward got a lot of complaints that jobs are too difficult. Accurate. I was there. I remember it. And then Stormblood came out and we had a lot of the synergy feedbacks. Like, oh, these jobs are hard to like sync up. You need to make sure you have like these jobs with these jobs. That was happening before, but it was really the only major complaint left with Stormblood. Then Shadowbringer synergized and created equity between the classes in the same role, but now the feedback is that they're all too similar, and Yoshida wants to, and people want to express individuality. Users tend to leave feedback focusing on current fun. However, since casual users do not give detailed feedback compared to hardcore users, the voices of users who demand individuality for each job are heard loudly. I mean, that's true, but that's because they care more. They're the people who, I guess, that detail matters more too. Thus, that's the feedback that matters in a sense. So you still have to, let me just read the rest. And let's not forget there are users on both sides, casual and hardcore. Until now, we have continued the keynote of reducing stress of users and making them enjoyable, but it's very difficult to control the wall of achievement because the two topics are different on a piece of paper. The combat content also has the impression of lowering stress excessively. In other words, saying both lowering the stress of playing jobs and lowering the stress of performing in raids, those both have been happening. So new expansion will bring back the excitement of the content. The content in the future is quite unique and difficult, so I hope you enjoy it. It's in this expansion pack. They're currently preparing for the expansion pack raid of the global server, and it'll continue the excitement with a unique gimmick that has never been seen before. Whether or not that's Fru or the next Savage tier, it's hard to say. I feel like when they say raids, they are most of the time referring to Savage. But yeah, I can't reveal the details yet, but I'm preparing for a change in my profession beyond my imagination. Basically saying like he wants to express himself as producer and director more. You know, that he has his own vision, and Yoshida has always talked about how his vision of games is just like, it's not so much that it doesn't align with 14, but that he would do stuff that we saw in the olden days more. Like, you gotta remember, he talks about how he used to play Dark Ages of Camelot, World of Warcraft. He's played a bunch of MMOs and has an idea of what he likes. But at this point, he can't really express his imagination or kind of dive into those systems because the game essentially it's got so big an audience that like he said, there's users on both sides of this. I hope you look forward to seeing how 14 will deal with it. However, it is difficult to apply the work that turns the excitement of the content and the job changes at the same time. Just regurgitating the rhetoric that they don't want to make drastic changes to content and drastic changes to jobs simultaneously. This expansion, we know they're focusing on making more engaging encounters. And then the next expansion, 8.0, they're going to be making efforts to make jobs more individual. It is something that has been said multiple times. He's still saying in interviews. We're probably going to hear it dozens more times over the next couple of years. But until we see the 8.0 job updates and changes, which is very far away, then I think that the kind of hesitant to believe response from the community is going to continue in that capacity. What was the most elaborate content you put in the build-up for the expansion? It's hard to use one type as an example. This is because it orchestrates the entire content. Among them, the part that spent the most amount of time and resources was the graphical update. Figured he was probably going to say that. He says, some users think graphics aren't that relevant, but I think the fact that previously blurred world became clear is an important part of the MMO, and I hope you enjoy it. How are Korean users perceived? How does he see the Korean fan base? Korean users show their emotions very honestly and intuitively. At first, they thought everyone was kind of nervous, but the welcome through the tension felt the solidarity of the community. Yeah, and then this is just talking about, the orchestra concert, the emotions behind that, how everyone was shouting when they were on stage, the performers were doing better as time went on, musicians were loving it, the sound became very loud, just basically saying overly, just very positive experience, very similar to the answer from before. I see a boy who loves games. Where does the motivation come from? Thank you for calling me a boy at 51. He just wants to make sure that the gameplay is good and the work of making a game is good. He doesn't compare himself to other people. Feels embarrassed because isn't everyone who makes games like that? No. The existing MMO industry, there was a jinx that if the launch failed, it would be impossible to resurrect. I've always thought that breaking those jinxes would be the success of 14 as a way to repay those who supported me. It's a great pleasure to hear the world tell me that 14 had broken that previous jinx. Basically just saying, 14 did rise from the ashes and continue to work. When I see 3 to 4-year-old children, they play so much that 3 to 4-year-old children playing? I think he just means playing in general, not playing Final Fantasy 14. They're just having so much fun, and for me, making a game feels a bit like being a kid playing. Of course, it's true making games is fun, but the work of an executive isn't so much fun. It almost sounds like he wishes he could go back to just making games instead of being in charge of everything. I guess I understand that. It's the grass isn't always greener when you're in charge kind of situation. Like you want to go back and do the things you were doing before, because that's the thing. They pulled him out of just working on other projects when they made him the director and producer of 14. Like he was developing, like actively developing things. And then he wasn't. There are some players who are thinking about getting into games as they watch the events going on. Is there anything you'd like to say? I mean, this is just, saying, hey, if you're new, welcome. Thinking of ways to welcome new users, introduce the gimmick of the content in advance. The game has expanded a lot during the pandemic. already playing the game, talk about the game. 14 is story-driven, which is rare. The story is also enough to play by yourself, so I think they'll be fun enough to just watch the story. Start to pay attention to the game little by little. The existing users will lead you. Just saying, if you get interested, then the people who are already playing the game will probably help you out. That's definitely true. Kind of excitement do you want to show at this point? This one's going to be one where I kind of have to skim through, because this is the kind of question Yoshida will go off on for ages and ages. The big thing is I can't talk about the developer's excitement in detail, but it's hard to hide my emotions so much that I naturally laugh every time I talk about it, because I have something I'm preparing right now. Users will surely be delighted. There's the excitement of the developer heading to that point. The excitement I want to show the users is the grand finale and the story from the fledgling Eorzea to the end of the filial piety can be seen as some kind of domino. Creating an enormous domino and toppling it in one fell swoop was the end of the piety. The process of stacking dominoes and reaching the climax is a very exhilarating process. Yes, climaxing can be an exhilarating process. However, once you defeat the dominoes, it's over, and now they're setting up dominoes one by one. So basically talking about how we knocked over all the dominoes to get to Endwalker. Now we're setting up new dominoes at this point, working towards that second climax. Stacking 2 dominoes and linking them is a rare event, so I hope users will wait in anticipation. Really excited to hide my identity and try new content with my friends. Yeah, he does that. He does have a personal character that I don't think they technically know it's him. So it just happens. After watching the Limit Breakers tournament, I want to try PvP again. Plan to try it as soon as I return to Japan. In fact, a friend of mine who was watching a live broadcast of Japan said, I wonder, wait, Limit Breakers tournament. So interestingly enough, I shoutcasted a PvP tournament not that long ago, and Yoshida showed up in the Japanese version of the stream. So like we had the English casters, we had Japanese casters, we had casters for multiple languages. And Yoshida himself popped up in the chat. I wonder if he's talking about that experience. I remember them sending a screenshot of it after it was done. And then shall we start crystalline conflict now? Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting to hear him bring that up in the interview. Anything you'd like to say to Korean players ahead of the expansion release in December? I've heard from users they're really positive and looking forward to it. It's our mission to bring you the best possible balance. Continue to do our best to make users smile. It's been a long time since I've come to Korea, and I was happy to see the smile of users. So overall, a lot of fluff in this interview. Again, some of the points probably lost due to the auto-translate of it, but I can't read it otherwise, so that's just what it's going to have to be. Hearing them like that they're going to do the separate balance is fairly interesting. Black Mage trying to ascend back to its rightful place ahead of Pictomancer. That's an interesting thing, because I feel like to achieve that, again, they mentioned in the other interview that Pictomancer's strength is a base. Somebody did correct it and say Pictomancer's strength is more like the base of what they're using to balance everything else and kind of make sure everything's where they wanted it to be. Which tells me that Machinist won't be anywhere near Pictomancer, as much as I was kind of hoping for that. But it is besides the point. Yeah, they've got a lot of buffing to do. There's just so much buffing to do to re-level and like keep everything level again, and then have to make the new content balance with that. It's going to be an interesting time. I don't think that's the way you should do it, but yeah, you can. So that's all there is to it. And then also hearing about how they've got all the stories like really planned out, you know, all the way up to 10.0 already. And they're just looking for ways to connect them after taking in user feedback, which has no doubt been a big thing with Dawntrail's release. Really interesting. Just a fun little insight into some of the things to expect and some of the ways that Yoshida is currently looking at Final Fantasy XIV and his involvement with it. So that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and keep an eye out. I'm sure we'll have plenty more news coming out for Final Fantasy XIV in the next few weeks as we get pretty close now to 7.1. Not too far away. So looking forward to it. Anyway, I will see all of you tomorrow. I'll see all of you in the next video. I'll probably post a video tomorrow. Who cares? Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Why not? Yeah, I'll post a video on the Adventure Supply Kit thing, which I still haven't posted even though I recorded it. So, yeah, I'll see you then. Until then, thanks for watching, and take care.